In the year 1443, a Portuguese ship arrived at the shores of Mauritania and left with 29 captive slaves in iron chains. Thus began the infamous centuries-long West African slave trade. In time, the Mauritanians too began enslaving their own countrymen. Although slavery was officially abolished in 1980, many of the 3 million Mauritanians remain in bondage to Islam, ignorance, superstition, corruption, racism, promiscuity, and poverty. This is a land where the beach of the Atlantic shore is the very sand of the Sahara. The Islamic Republic of Mauritania is a country twice the size of France, but 70% desert. It is the uneasy crossroads of Arab North Africa and black sub-Saharan Africa. At the time the nation received its independence from France in 1960, 90% of the Mauritanians were nomads. Since then, severe cyclical droughts, desertification, and massive locust invasions have driven these nomadic peoples to urban centers. With perhaps less than 1% of the land under permanent cultivation, large segments of the population have suffered losses in income and health, and have endured violent clashes between ethnic groups over limited water and grazing land. In Mauritania, there are 3 main ethnic groups: White Moors, Black Moors, and Pular. White Moors are an ethnic mix of the Arab and Berber people who moved into the region almost a millennium ago. They make up about 1/3 of the population of Mauritania and hold most positions of power and influence. Black Moors are the descendants of black African tribes who were conquered, enslaved, and brought to North Africa by the ancestors of the White Moors. The Black Moors are ethnically sub-Saharan African, but culturally Arab. Some continue in servitude to White Moors. Many others are unemployed and live in poverty. The Pular belong to the large Fulani group of black African peoples that range across Western Africa. Unfortunately for these nomadic herders, the Pular in Mauritania suffer ethnic discrimination that results in persistent unemployment and poverty. The remaining 6% of Mauritanian nationals are Wolof, Soninka, Bambara, and a handful of other smaller people groups that similarly bear the brunt of racism at the hands of the ruling White Moors. Almost 1/3 of Mauritania's population resides here in its capital city, Nouakchott, which means place of blowing sands. It's one of the fastest growing cities in all of Africa. Shantytowns have sprung up around the city, and a lack of sanitation and clean water have become urgent problems. People from all over Mauritania and immigrants from other African nations have come to Nouakchott in search of work. In all their seeking, many find only more sand. Most Mauritanians live on a simple, starchy diet of couscous and rice. Families can rarely afford meat or fish, but they are renowned for their generous hospitality. Even the poorest people will go out of their way to have the honor of serving guests numerous glasses of sweet mint tea. Per capita income of around $1 per day makes Mauritania one of the poorest nations in Africa. The hunger and desperation that accompanies such poverty too often leads to dependence upon thievery and prostitution to put food on the family table. Yet Mauritania is blessed with valuable natural resources, and the nation's coastal waters are among the richest fishing areas in the world. Sadly, much of what reaches shore is what has been rejected by the many foreign-owned fishing vessels just beyond the horizon. Major oil production initiatives began shortly after the discovery of new oil reserves in 2006. Unfortunately, internal corruption and exploitation by foreign nations prevents much benefit from reaching the average Mauritanian. Not all the news coming out of Mauritania is bad. In April of 2007, the citizens of Mauritania elected a new president in a peaceful, free, and fair election. Even people who weren't pleased with the outcome praised the process. Here, in a nation still struggling with tribalism and the legacy of slavery, democracy was welcomed. And so, in this quiet way, the this little desert country has become a leader in Africa. Mauritanians believe that their society is the most Islamic west of Saudi Arabia, and that it's their destiny to promote Islam and Islamic values throughout Black Africa. Many families sacrifice greatly to send at least one child to study under Islamic teachers and to memorize the entire Quran. Throughout Mauritania, highly revered, mystical Muslim holy men called marabouts are available for hire to offer prayers for the sick, place curses on enemies, foretell the future, and produce amulets to ward off evil spirits. Many Mauritanians, regardless of education or socioeconomic level, wear such charms. Until very recently, there were only a few known Mauritanian believers and no Mauritanian churches. The good news is that in response to a consistent witness in the face of persecution, coupled with an increase in focused strategic prayer, God is bringing Mauritanians to Himself. While Christian missionaries are not allowed in Mauritania, a small number of Great Commission Christians have found creative ways to live and work in the country. Today, there are also a number of expatriate churches operating in Nouakchott, attended by Christians from other African nations. While Mauritanian nationals are forbidden by law to enter them, the zeal and witness of these churches is contagious beyond their doors. Praise God, there are now believed to be as many as 300 national Christians in Mauritania. Even though converting to Christianity is strictly forbidden on threat of death, Mauritanian Christians now meet in house churches in 5 cities. Many pay a high price to follow Christ. Some believers' marriages are destroyed by divorce, forced upon them by spouses or in-laws. Others may lose jobs or face eviction from their homes. Despite recent victories, many obstacles remain. Of the 8 spoken languages in Mauritania, only 1 has the complete Bible in print. Millions of Mauritanians need your prayers to break the chains that keep them in bondage and prevent them from receiving the gospel message. The few Mauritanian Christians and the workers among them cannot reach their nation alone. Please join intercessors around the world in praying and setting Mauritanians free in Jesus.